So hello, welcome to anyone joining me from the Escuela Oficial de Idiomas in Alcalá de Henares, where I was 2 weeks back, delivering a very enjoyable session to teachers of various languages. Welcome guys if you've joined from there. Welcome too if anybody's joined from the sessions down in Reggio Calabria for IH British School last week. And welcome aboard if anybody's joined from the Macmillan Mondadori webinar sessions we did earlier this week. Quite a few of you signed up to the channel there. Bless you. Welcome if you've come from anywhere else, and to the old faithfuls, people who've subscribed and stayed subscribed for a long time. Thank you, people. I'm going to crack on. We're coming to the end of these clips on differentiation. We've been here for quite a while, but I wanted to have them all in the same place so they'd be easy to find, easy to refer people to. So I think we've got one more after this. This is the penultimate. There's a couple of points I want to reiterate. The first one is when we're talking about struggling learners and advanced learners, it's something that I've already mentioned recently, but every learner has a moment when they're struggling or when they're finding an exercise or a language task easy. So we are all struggling learners and advanced learners and mid-range learners at some point. So again, these are not fixed, immutable labels that we're putting on people. The second thing, and this is something that I took for granted early when I was making the clips before, and then I realised as I was getting, working my way through these clips, maybe I need to mention this, or should have mentioned it from the start, that we never, ever want to be using these terms in the classroom. Our students don't want to be hearing us referring to them as struggling learners, advanced learners. That they're not labelled. That we don't want to put these on the top of any sort of materials, struggling version for advanced learners. It's not good for people who are struggling. It's not good for people who are ahead of the material or the tasks we're giving them either, particularly. So, as I say, these are not terms. We don't want to be referring, struggling learners, you're over here. No, please not. Task variations and our interventions need doing, need managing with sensitivity. Right, those were the 2 points I wanted to reiterate. Now, a point that I made, and I did just pause I've never done that before, pause the clip in the middle of recording. A point that I made in this book, Understanding Teenagers in the ELT Classroom, that I haven't held up for a while, but this is the book that actually kind of prompted me to start this channel, and many of the earlier ideas that I was talking about have come from this book. And in fact, I'll pick up on this book after we've finished this, these clips on differentiation. We'll come back to this a little bit. So this is a 2018 book, lovely and thick, 300 and more pages of thoughts and ideas on teaching teenagers. Now, in here, I mentioned that in terms of classroom management, what we have a tendency to do is we have a tendency to kind of look at the extremes. We are drawn to polar opposites, and a teacher in a classroom will notice the students behaving very well on the one hand, and they'll notice the students behaving not so well on the other. We tend to get drawn to the kind of the good ones and the bad ones, and sometimes forget about what's in between in terms of classroom management. In terms of differentiation, I think we tend to do the same, and that's reflected perhaps even in the way I've been talking about these, struggling and advanced learners. We tend to gravitate towards the people having problems and the people who are flying through the material seemingly too easily. However, that does leave the students in the middle. Now, it's interesting. I don't know if there is a fixed and established name for these. We could call them middle students, mid-range students. But the thing is, sometimes we overlook those students who are not having problems or not finishing first. And this will probably be the majority of our class. So in some ways, our attention is getting drawn to the minority. So I think what we need is some sort of way to remind ourselves to pay attention to everybody. Because somebody might actually, they might be having a problem with a task, or they might need a little nudge. But if they're quietly getting on with it, they can often fly under our radar. So one of the techniques I use to try to remind myself to pay attention to everybody, whether they've asked for help or not, whether they're drawing attention to themselves or not, is to use little dots on the register. I'll take the register list, and each day, if it's a small group, I'll put a little dot. I've got people moving furniture upstairs. Hope it's not annoying you too much. If you don't mind, I don't mind. Put a little dot next to the most recent student on the register. Or we put a dot next to the first one on the register, and in that lesson, we pay attention to them. We try to check what they're doing, have a look, spend a little time monitoring them. If it's a larger class, we could put maybe 2, 3 dots onto the next 2 or 3 students and just make sure that during the lesson we have a little look at what they're doing, regardless of whether they've asked us for help or not. So what we're doing is we're just rotating, making sure there's some sort of systematic rotation of our teacher attention, regardless of whether students are calling out for help or not. The other thing, and this is the main point I wanted to make in this clip, is that when we think about struggling students, mid-range students and advanced students, there's 2 ways to think about them. There's one way I think we need to I would like us to get rid of now we've got to this point. And that is, when we talk about a struggling student, we don't want to be talking about them as struggling relative to the rest of the group. When we talk about a mid-range learner or an advanced learner, we don't really want to be talking about them meaning that with reference to where they are in relation to the rest of the group. That is not, I think, what we want to be talking about. We want to sweep that away and replace it with whether they're struggling or whether they're advanced in relation to the task that they're doing. It doesn't matter where they lie in position, in rankings with the rest of the class. It matters where they are with regard to how they are managing the task that they are on. Are they struggling with that? Are they advanced in terms of the level required for that task? Or are they just where they need to be able to do it? That, I think, is where we should get our definitions of struggling and advanced. And the thing is, if we do that, then middle learners, that whole concept falls away. Because we're not worried about, we're not defining them in relation to the others. There is no middle of the class because we're not thinking where they are in terms of the class. We're thinking where they are, how they're performing in terms of the task. So it's not really middle. They're not in the middle of anything. So where are the middle learners? They're not anywhere. I would like to probably replace that concept with something like, on-task learners or on-level learners, meaning they have more or less the right level for the grading of the task. So I'd probably use the term on-level learners for that particular task. That is, that's what I'm talking about. So where are the middle learners? They're not stuck between the advanced learners and the struggling learners. And the struggling learners are not at the bottom in relation to all the other students in the class. And the advanced learners are not ahead of the others It's not to do with where they are in relation to each other. It's where they are in relation to what they've got on the page, or what we've asked them to say, or what they're trying to say. It's where they are in relation to the task itself, which is why who the struggling learner is, who the advanced learner is, and who the on-level learner is constantly changing according to the task that we're giving, which is why we need to be constantly checking and looking and seeing how they're managing the task, and not bias, not making presumptions, not assuming that this student is always going to be having problems and this student is always going to be flying by. This is something that we've talked about a lot. So that is my point there. Where are the middle learners? Well, they're not anywhere in the middle. It's all about where the learners are in relation to the task we've given them. I've said it 3 times now. I kind of like how it's coming out. I could say it 4 or 5 times. I'm going to stop. You get the idea. It's a very subtle point, but I think it's quite an important point. Because we're using those terms all the time. And after all, these clips were meant to explore the finer points of differentiation. I hope that is what you feel this one has done. I wish you all the very best with your differentiation, all the very best with your lessons, strength and energy with your teaching.